Hello, everyone. Sorry, it's a little bit blurry. I'm using the webcam on my laptop. YouTube says I still have some eligibility requirements to be able to stream from the better camera on my phone. But I wanted to quickly go over a rough draft of my testimony this evening, do a practice run, as well as show everyone the talking points I've emailed to every industry provider and company I could find. I believe the total for the companies was probably 8 or 10. I know there's a few out there who have already sent out emails regarding their talking points and what they think customers should say, But I believe a lot of those focused in on the grandfathering aspect, but I believe customers and especially the industry should talk about the entirety of the case as well as how it affects them, their loss of revenue, things like that. So I'll go over those talking points as well as the original talking points I made for customers. So if you're a customer, these are the quick talking points. They're on our social media at Awaken Solar on all the major platforms, Instagram and Facebook. If you just search Awaken Solar or on YouTube here, you should be able to find this pretty easily. It's just the green sheet. It's printed on green paper, meaning literally green paper. The first point is that in case IPC-E-18-15, the Idaho Power application to study net excess energy from customer on-site generation, significant value and benefits are there for solar, but they've been given a placeholder value of 0. So the benefits of solar in the last case, the Public Utility Commission, you can find the quote. They ordered that a comprehensive study be done of the cost and benefits of solar to the grid, and currently only the cost and some of the benefits, or what Idaho Power would consider some of the major ones, have any value, and a lot of the benefits from Idaho Power's own quote, avoided transmission and distribution, integration cost, and environmental benefits have a 0 value or a placeholder value that should be fixed later, but that could take years. And so the customers will suffer if their rate of compensation for on-site generation or having solar is reduced with no benefit factored into that. So it's kind of like they're studying one side of the coin. They're looking at all the cost and coming up with a number. And if they were to look at all the benefits, the number would be higher. And that's what hasn't been done in this case, and this agreed upon settlement. Distributed energy is basically the same as energy efficiency. I'll have a handout for this that I'll post on, that I made last night, that I'll post on social media as well. But basically, if you have a power line or a road with a main feeder line or a circuit of the grid on it, and you have 2 sets of homes, let's say 2 subdivisions, one on this side of the road and one on the other, and they're both exactly the exact same power use, 100 homes over here and 100 over here, or even 1,000 homes. And example 1, they watch some of the millions of dollars in ads that Idaho Power has up for energy efficiency, encouraging energy efficiency, and they lowered their use from, let's say, 100,000 kilowatts to 90,000. They lower it by 10%. Versus this circuit of the grid, they don't change anything on their efficiency except 10% of the homes go solar, and they lower it the same 10%. The ultimate effect on those feeder lines that are supplying power is the same. You need 10% less in kilowatts to feed both of those subdivisions, both of those groups of homes or businesses or a mixture. And so Idaho Power and most power companies are spending money to get homeowners and users, customers, more energy efficient. And yet now they're spending money to change the compensation for solar customers who ultimately lower the demand load on the grid. Yes, during non-peak times, they are supplying power, but all that means is that the normal supply from wherever that power is coming from, whatever power plant miles and miles away, the demand is less because the power is coming from, let's say, this group of homes going to that one, or usually it's just being used up by the people who don't have solar. And in Idaho, around 1% or less of homes are solar. I mean, the industry isn't even keeping up with the growth in Idaho. We add 10, maybe 15,000 homes per year to the grid. We add 1,000, maybe a little more solar customers to the grid each year. And this data is published everywhere in the reports from Idaho Power. So distributed energy, having all these little power plants versus having all the power come in from one point, also has a benefit that isn't mentioned, being more reliable and less susceptible to terrorism attack. If if some event happens at a power plant or on one of those lines coming in, you have a blackout across the board versus it's really hard to take out distributed generation. If you have all these points, you might have a small section of the grid, one circuit per se, go down. And all the rest of them, if it's a sunny day, they have power. In California, the wildfires and the cutoffs, it's because they haven't added storage yet. Storage isn't as cost efficient, but if some users in California had solar and had on-site storage, they still had power during those blackouts. And that's the future of the grid. A side note, instead of this kind of case, instead of the settlement in case 1815 in Idaho Power could incentivize batteries, help customers purchase batteries that purchase on-site generation. Then they don't have any power going back to the grid. And in that subsidy, in that helping the money used to help people buy solar with batteries, the power company could potentially have access to the battery power to use in peak times. So not only would the solar and battery benefit the grid by being able to store power locally and have that customer have power if the grid goes down, but it would help the grid not go down by being able to supply power from that battery. You could do something like, if the battery is fully charged, the power company can use 50% of its capacity to supply other customers. So the money they could give you to buy the battery, they would recover in kilowatts pulled from that battery at peak time, which are the most expensive kilowatts. So that's a side note. The point 3 I made for the public, the PUC commissioners, Paul Schellender, Christine Raper, and Eric Anderson in 2018, they ordered, this is the quote, that Idaho Power shall initiate a docket to comprehensively study the cost and benefits of on-site generation on Idaho Power's system, as well as proper rates and rate design, transitional rates, and related issues of compensation for net excess energy provided as a resource to the company, end quote. They also ordered, that's what they ordered. They also assured the company's customers, quote, assured the company's customers that discriminatory rates will not follow from the outcome of this case, as the prevention of discriminatory rates by the utility is the main purpose of this commission's oversight. Commission staff's public service and many interveners and public participants' involvement in these important cases, unquote. And so I was a participant and testified in that case as well. Here's a thing that a customer who's potentially looking to go solar, I believe, should look up is what customers or what solar companies testified on behalf of their customers, and look up that testimony. It's all part of the public record. In that last case, I spoke with a company yesterday who I gave these talking points to, and their person that answered the phone said that they were very savvy and have been involved with these cases before, and they're claiming to be a local company who fights for Idahoans' rights. And I asked where I would find their testimony, and got no answer. Just said, well, we've been involved. If they're not testifying, they're not doing what's right by their customers to defend their rights. So, number 4, the commission should define an existing customer as a person or entity who has submitted an on-site generation application. I believe 1 year, but sometime in the future when the cases IPC-E-18-15 and 18-16 are both passed and closed in the future, meaning once we've closed the rate cases related to solar, then we can set a date to where anyone who wanted to go solar and submitted a net meter application to the power company can be cut off, meaning, there's a proposal in this case and testimony and statements from Idaho Power and even the Public Utility Commission staff that the date should be when the settlement arrangements were first published. So anyone who submits a net meter application who hasn't read all this yet wouldn't be grandfathered in, wouldn't be brought into the net metering policy as it currently still is. We haven't changed it yet in Idaho, and hopefully it doesn't change. But if it did, we need a timeline to adapt. The customers need the ability and the right who are in Schedule 1 to go into Schedule 6 or 8, the on-site generation classifications. So that next point is just clarifying that the grandfathering of existing customers and solar customers in the near future is the only fair, just, and reasonable order that the Public Utility Commission should make. The fact that only the grandfathering is on the table, that seems to me to be a huge disservice to the industry, that says my connection's unstable. That's not good. Okay, I think we're back if it went out. But the other part of it is that the notifications going out saying that just talk about grandfathering are erroneous. Every customer, every on-site generation customer especially, should testify about the entirety of the case, should talk about the rate, why it shouldn't be lowered, why it should stay the same until we can weigh the benefits of solar, how efficiency factors in to being compared to solar, how it's discriminatory to single out solar customers, as the Public Utility Commission and Idaho Power staff both agree it's a rate design issue. It's not just a solar issue. So it's discriminatory for this case to take place before the full rate redesign can happen, and the study of the rates and how they're structured should happen. Not getting too far in the weeds, but Idaho Power claims that their fixed costs are really high. They're the majority of what you pay per kilowatt hour bill. The more power you use, the more you pay. And they're saying that a lot of those costs, the majority of them are because of fixed cost of the lines that exist and staff and all these costs they incur. Advertising for energy efficiency is one of their costs. So they're claiming it's a huge cost. So the rates need to be redesigned so that the fixed cost can be a bigger charge. So that needs to happen for all customers for it to be fair. Because again, if I stop using my air conditioner and just run a fan in the summertime, I'm using less power, I'm paying less, and that's a cost shift to everyone else. Just like if I had solar offsetting my air conditioner usage. So Idaho Power, I already made this point, has informed the solar industries, but they have not informed everyone and admit that it's a rate problem. So we shouldn't settle the case. Those are the real customer issues. The two biggest ones to take home are that being more energy efficient, Idaho Power spends a lot of money on advertising to encourage energy efficiency, but is now spending money to discourage energy efficiency to only solar. And they have the ultimate same net effect on the grid of lowering the demand. This is the talking points to the industry. Good, we're only 12 minutes in, so I got to this pretty quickly. I'll go over these and just briefly discuss them. They'll be in my testimony this evening as well, in shorter form, more rehearsed, but this is kind of the ultimate rehearsal. So I'll put it right here next to it so I can see it. Here are the points I'll be making, solar industry talking points, but especially I encouraged everyone I set these points out to tell stories of how they've been affected by this. This case IPC-E-18-15, it's had a huge negative impact on the industry, on the number of inquiries and the number of appointments. I've even had customers who were solar, commercial and residential, back out and not go solar because of this case. They feel that it's up in the air and they have no idea what their returns might be. And I sympathize with them because I can't honestly predict their returns knowing that net metering now or it might change. We don't know. We don't know what the returns would be. So we've lost thousands in revenue. The industry, needs to survive. It needs stability to prosper and to have the most growth in Idaho that can service every customer who might want to go solar. So a direct estimate, I just talked with one solar owner. He estimated it was upwards of $60,000. My total project cost that I can verify is backed out because of this case is probably upwards of $80,000 in total costs of revenue, a few thousand for sure to me directly and to the company that would be installing them. Solar industry companies, employees are leaving the state. This has already happened. I can verify 3 that have left the state. And this will ultimately drive costs up to customers. Less competition means, less cutting costs to compete. And I truly believe that's why some of the organizations have signed on to this settlement. They're part of the leadership team of the organizations that signed on. They're owners and workers in solar companies, and they believe their bottom line or their profits will increase if there's less competition. So they're looking forward to these companies and workers leaving the state, because if they stay, they'll be one of the only ones left. I think they're mistaken. I believe that the growth and prosperity of the industry helps everyone, have more success. If you're a good company, then you should be able to beat your competition versus having to make your competition leave, and you can be a subpar company and survive because you're one of the only ones that stayed in a state where basically the industry has set back years and years, and that's a problem to the customer. Ethically disclose what your savings will be. I can show you worst case scenario, but it might not be that. It could be better, but nobody really wants to the numbers in solar, really, it's hard to make them make sense if it's a worst case scenario. If your return is potentially a lot longer than it will be or could be, that hurts the industry hugely. And you have an ethical dilemma where some companies are still selling solar and showing what the rate is that it exists now, the 1-to-1 credit, because that's currently what it is. We know it will probably change, but we don't know to what. So you could either show best case scenario or worst case scenario. And there's an ethical dilemma there of what a professional in the industry should do. So that's huge. This is really hurting the industry. And the date of any adjustment also not being known, or it could be retroactive or it could be in the future. Mr. Customer, if you go solar today, your net meter application gets dated today, December 3rd, but it may not, you may be under the current rate or you may be under a future one. We don't know. It could be retroactive. They could set this cutoff date as the Public Utility Commission staff recommended, October 11th. Well, the rate's spent a lot of time on it, but basically I was in a meeting, which is all true. Owners didn't feel as though, they had been involved and notified about this. So, all the different organizations that there are, some have signed off on it. Many have pulled off and not put their name on the settlement, and also not objected because they felt obligated to the people who did want to settle. I mean, it's just been a mess, and it's all been confidential behind closed doors. And then the settlement is published, put out there by the PUC, and now we have this quick hearing on it the week after Thanksgiving, by the way, with only a few weeks to prepare and read everything and try to figure out and inform customers of what they can say and what's going to happen or what might happen. It's terrible. So again, the benefits of solar that I've already mentioned, the industry should speak to that. They have more expertise than anyone on the true benefits. I do want to talk about transformer upgrades. When we've had to do those, when the study with the net meter application goes to the power company, goes to Idaho Power, and they come back and say, no, we need to upgrade this transformer, the customer pays for that. Oftentimes, a company will have to help the customer pay for that just so that they don't risk losing the project. They'll take part of the cost. It's normally $2,000 to $3,000 to upgrade the transformer. The utility doesn't pay anything to get a new, more efficient, bigger and better transformer, part of the equipment of their grid to help service that circuit. Is paid for 100% by the customer when they go solar and require a transformer upgrade. That's a huge point. Part of the reason they're saying this is a huge cost is we might have to upgrade the grid sooner than we would have if there are more solar customers. Well, if the solar industry pays for it and the solar customer pays for it, now the power company can put more homes on that circuit and have the new transformer that was paid for by this one customer. They can make more revenue based on the upgrades that the solar customer provided to the grid. That's a fact. I have receipts that I'll try to submit, and I'll submit with comments to show that to the Public Utility Commission. Substations that are near max capacity, if on those circuits where those substations are, the existing infrastructure was upgraded with solar, they wouldn't need to upgrade the substations as quickly. So it would reduce the cost to the grid of upgrading because now you have distributed generation with solar helping lessen the load on that substation. The biggest takeaway for me that would cause a solution that the power company, that Idaho Power would really be fair, would be moving to time of use. Completely redesigning the whole rate class, every rate class, to time of use so that it's a fair hourly. If you're using a lot of power at 7 p.m. when we're at peak demand, when everyone's come home from work, or 6 p.m. or whatever time the grid is most stressed, those kilowatts should cost more, both for solar customers if they're using power from the grid above what their solar is producing, and for regular customers so that it's fair, non-discriminatory. If you were producing a lot of power at, let's say, 1 p.m. and the load on the grid was very minimal, meaning it wasn't a peak power time like in spring when no one's running their air conditioner yet in Idaho, or not no one, most people aren't, the grid has a lot of extra power, the compensation can be less, maybe 90% of a 1-to-1 ratio, so that the grid is paying for their infrastructure and using your power and making a little money off of it. You're getting a 90% credit instead of a 1-to-1 credit. But in summertime, you might get more than a 1-to-1 credit if you're producing power when the grid needs it. So time of use would really level this all out and give us a fair and reasonable and just solution to what is a rate problem, a rate design issue, not a solar issue. The Idaho Power staff have confirmed that with me, that it's a rate design problem. It's not specific to solar. just like the point I've made a couple times already, where if you're more energy efficient, you create a cost shift onto the other customers too. You use less power, they have to recover that loss of revenue from your neighbors. Okay. Economic diversity of customers. This was seen yesterday in the phone hearing, the phone testimony. We had teachers, we had farmers and construction workers, people that were low and high income testifying of how this isn't fair that have gone solar. So solar isn't just some toy for the rich anymore. Over the past few years, the costs have become so competitive with the power company that I believe that's, in my opinion, why they're attacking solar. They're losing revenue to people that have the freedom to own their own solar, own their own power company on their roof. That's a beautiful thing. If someone can be a teacher and show their students how much power they're making on their roof every month, and that matches their consumption, and they're energy independent, they're using renewable power on their roof, they're not taking up the environment. The way I see the environment of solar having the biggest impact is not having to put in, if the utility company owns solar, a solar farm or a coal plant or a dam or anything like that, we're not changing the environment at all. We're already using our roof space on our house. That land is occupied by humans, and we put solar panels on the roof to power what's underneath that house that we use every day. That makes a lot of sense to me, and that's a huge environmental benefit. So the diversity of customers, you have all types, all levels of the economy that are solar customers. So again, the industry has to use guesswork to define potential savings for customers, and we're losing money hand over fist, losing revenue, losing our ability to survive and feed our families because of this case. And the net hourly that's proposed in this case, meaning every single hour, we would have to measure your consumption of how much power you use every hour, 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., and then try to match your solar to give you the savings. What will the solar produce in that hour and what you use? Net hourly is the proposal here. It's so burdensome to the industry and unnecessary. Again, just a time of use where you have these blocks where the power company can determine over the next couple of years what each block costs them to service, and have solar, compensation be relative to those costs and kilowatt hour charges. That makes sense versus net hourly just for solar. If we're going to do net hourly in Idaho, we need to do it across the board. We need all rate classes to be net hourly for it to be fair, just, and reasonable. So again, grandfathering should be is the only fair outcome. The real problem is rate design. I've already mentioned that. The PUC and Idaho Power confirmed that. Other methods of potential utility upgrades could create prosperity. In this case, if the power company had said, we want to fix the solar issue first, or the rate design issue from solar customers first, they could incentivize west-facing panels or even recommend them. West-facing panels would mean the solar is providing more power in the evening when the grid has the most strain. That would help solve this problem. It would help lessen the amount of solar that's being backfed into the grid. The excess generation at 2 p.m., let's say, would be happening more at 7 p.m. That would solve it. Battery incentives that I already mentioned. Solar sizing for maximum utility benefit, suggesting or even incentivizing that if you have maybe 50 or 80% offset instead of 100, that would really limit the amount of kilowatts that would be excess to the grid, and the utility company could incentivize that in some way, or even suggest it again. The utility or the solar companies really want to work with the utility to find solutions that don't create problems. And these kind of cases and these kind of proposals from the utility of how we're going to change and adapt just create this sort of butting heads of, no, instead of completely cutting away all of our ability to prosper, let's come to a middle ground that helps everyone. Electricity consumption and energy efficiency are virtually identical. I already talked at length about that. I see that as one of the biggest points in this case. So here's a big point as well. The utility company, Idaho Power, is going to be installing huge solar farms that they own, megawatts. I believe it's like titled Jackpot Holdings solar project, megawatts in the coming year. So they're going to be putting in all their solar, huge amounts, thousands of homes worth of solar, and selling it to customers. They're going to be selling solar power to customers that they own, that they're going to profit from. Why not allow the private customers to put in those megawatts on their roofs and cover 100% of the cost. You don't have to put in a power plant. Customers are going to do it by the thousands if solar is prospering. That seems like a no-brainer. As a utility company, as an Idahoan, as a citizen, the citizens should have priority to choose how their grid is done. They should choose the ability to own their own generation instead of the power company owning it and disincentivizing your generation. Other negative impacts to the industry, there are a lot of data and figures that I hope other professionals are going to submit and put out there in this case. Thank you for listening. I'll be fine-tuning my testimony. I'll be ending on the point of, do we want to appear to the nation and the world that Idaho is backwards and has one of the worst solar policies in the nation? Or do we want to lead the way of solar adoption? As Idaho Power has said, they want to be 100% renewable by 2045. By the year 2045, 100% renewable. Help the solar industry, help your solar customers, your customers who want to go solar, do that. Incentivize them. Don't, do these cases where we only factor in costs. Some of the statements they've made are just ludicrous of the reasoning and justification for hurting the industry and hurting customers. But I don't want my children, I don't want your children, future generations to look back and say, wow, what were they thinking? Why did they pass this settlement? Why did they pass this policy and basically gut and kill the solar industry and have a few installations where we could have had thousands and helped the grid in a large way? I don't want that to be the policy we have in Idaho, and I hope this Public Utility Commission of the three commissioners agrees with that thinking. Thank you so much. And if you want more information, please follow us on awakensolar.com or on social media at awakensolar, as well as YouTube. We'll be putting out and covering this, as well as other rate cases, hopefully across the country very soon. Thank you.